And I'm not going to say something that's not true. Sorry.
That's a characteristic men have. You know, if you ever need to shut comments like that down, just invite my wife to the filming.
She'll be glad to tell you.
I'll be on my best behavior and then some. Hello, I'm Larry, and this is Carter's Country. Today, got Billy Carter with me here, and we're going to talk about a subject that kind of has gotten pushed to the back of the class in general discussions, and that's revolvers. Right. You know, I kind of look at them like a manual transmission. There was nothing wrong with them. A lot of people moved on to something else, but right. A revolver can still fill any need that you would have, whether home defense, personal defense, you know, everyday carry, target shooting. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them. And people our age growing up, all we saw generally in movies was revolvers. You know, from Matt Dillon to Dirty Harry, everybody had revolvers. Yeah, that's right. And then at some point that transitioned. You stopped seeing revolvers in movies and television. And I think maybe that's, along with, of course, a lot of other factors, is why they've kind of moved to the back of people's consciousness. Right. But let's talk today about revolvers. And this, as we do anytime we talk about firearms, why don't you start on the safety aspects of a revolver for us?
Most all revolvers do not come with what we call manual type safety levers. There are a few out there, but it's not typically something that you'll see on a revolver. So, but all revolvers now are probably some of the most safe firearms that you can actually handle. There's a lot of times that we will recommend for people who are not big time into guns and not wanting to get involved with semi-automatics, the revolver is a great option for that kind of stuff.
Right.
This is a Ruger 22 revolver. This is what they call a single action revolver. There's no, you will have to cock the hammer back every single time in order to make the gun go off, okay? All new model revolvers have what the transfer bar safeties in them, which is basically just a bar that will cover up the firing pin to where the gun cannot go off if you dropped it or anything like that. Older guns, like the old cowboy guns and so forth, right. If you hit the hammer hard enough, you can actually make the gun go off. Or if you dropped it, it would go off.
Right.
And the older gun used to have what is called a half cock safety, which you pull the hammer back, which is going to signify that, which if you feel that first click, it means it's actually will not contact the actual firing pin at all. So it still won't go off.
So for this one to fire with this type of safety, the hammer, of course, is integrated with the trigger, but unless the trigger is activated, the hammer's not going to have access to the firing pin, to the primer, and boom.
Correct, yes.
Gotcha.
You will have to manually cock the hammer all the way back in order to fire this gun every time.
Right, okay.
They're in what they call a single action. In order to load and unload the gun, you will simply roll this loading gate out, okay? At this point in time, you will see the actual holes in the cylinder. So you'll take one shell at a time and you'll slide them in, you move it to the next hole, slide it in, move it to the next hole, slide, until you have 6 rounds in the gun, all right? At that point in time, you will close the loading gate, and then you always kind of take and click it to where the actual cylinder is in place. And then, like we talked about before, in order to fire this gun, you have to cock it back every single time in order for the gun to go off and pull the trigger. All right, right now we have a Smith & Wesson 357, one of their better quality double action 357s are on the market today. Okay, in order to load this gun, you will simply, on the left-hand side of the gun, there's an actual cylinder release that you'll push forward, and then you'll roll the cylinder out. Okay, at this point in time, you'll turn around, and then you will load the rounds. Just drop 6 rounds in the actual cylinders. And here again, you're going to close it and be sure that the cylinder is locked in place, and then you're ready to fire the gun. These guns can be fired one of 2 ways. The more accurate way to fire the gun is going to be cocking the hammer back and then pulling the trigger, or it can still be fired by simply pulling the trigger itself. That's what they call the double action part of the deal. You have 2 different ways to fire this gun. In a true defense type situation, you're more than likely not going to have time to think about cocking the hammer back, so you're just going to double action fire. So just as a side note, it's very important that whenever you're getting used to a gun like this and shooting a gun like this, you practice double action firing it as much as you do single action firing it. The biggest reason to shoot it in a single action mode, or when you cock hammer back, would be because you have a whole lot less trigger pull. Watch the trigger, move that all the way back to there, so you have that much less of an actual amount to pull on the trigger, so you have less time for human error. It's much easier that way. But there again, if you're going to be in a self-defense type situation, you're more than likely just going to have to pull that whole entire trigger, which is a lot. So it takes a lot more effort, and you'll have to concentrate more on keeping your actual sights on the target for a much longer period of time in order to fire it correctly.
Okay, now we've talked about how you load the different types of revolvers with the side gate or rolling the cylinder out. Let's talk a little bit about unloading one. In either case, kind of walk us through what you do.
Okay. Well, a little different sequence for either one. We'll start with a single action gun. In order to unload a single action revolver, a couple of things we're going to end up doing. Okay, number one, we're going to open the loading gate. Okay, then we're going to line the actual ejector rod up to the first hole, and then we're going to slide the ejector rod through the hole one at a time and rotate through the cylinder all the way around until you get them all out of the shell. And this would be for either live rounds or spent cases. This will work as far as to unload the gun itself. And this is the ejector rod, what they call the ejector rod on a single action revolver. This is what you actually activate in order to actually unload the firearm. Now we have a double action revolver back in our hands here. And in order to load and unload this gun, you will simply take the gun, roll it around, and you'll push the actual loading lever forward and roll the cylinder out. At this point in time, sometimes you can actually just push them straight out. Sometimes you may need to give it a little assistance as far as pushing it with the heel of your hand with a little more pressure. Sometimes the actual spent cases are a little harder to get out because they've just been fired.
Okay, now we've talked about safe handling, loading and unloading. Let's talk about what's really having a revolver is all about, and that's shooting it. Kind of talk a little bit about the grip, what differs maybe from it and the semi-automatic, a couple of do's and don'ts on that.
Right. Probably one of the main things to remember is that hot gases come out from where the cylinder ends and where the barrel begins. There's a few thousandths, actually space in there.
Okay.
So I have seen people actually get cut because they had their actual arms or fingers or whatever too close to in front of that gap right there. So
Whoa,
if you fired that gun right now with that finger placement, you would have a nice nasty gash across your finger when the gases come through.
Wow, I never thought about that. That's a little scary. I guess I've been lucky.
Yes, you have to this point.
So I guess if you've got kind of a big hand and you're shooting a small revolver, it wouldn't be hard to imagine a thumb being up in the don't be there zone.
Absolutely, sir. You need to be sure. That's why we keep lots of Band-Aids around.
I'm running through my list of the revolver zone, making sure they're big enough. So.
Right. Yeah, but holding is going to be basically the same thing you'll do with a semi-automatic in a lot of ways. There's many different theories out there, which we don't have time to get in all those different ones, of course. But some of the theories say that you got to be careful about your hand placement, and as far as worrying about the actual hammer coming from the recoil coming back and cutting you in the hand. But it's shooting normal like low caliber guns,
right?
But if you start shooting the big stuff like the big 500 S&Ws and 460 Smith & Wesson, stuff like that, it becomes a whole lot more prevalent of an actual concern for yourself.
I've learned that the hard way. I shot a Smith & Wesson 500. We won't go into in this video, but I'll tell you a couple stories that I learned about shooting that caliber of handgun. Good Lord.
It's a whole different ballgame for sure.
Absolutely. This is a 357 Magnum. It's, obviously it's got its own power, but that's a whole nother, it's a
whole nother realm.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. This is the typical hold that I use on a revolver. You'll see some people want to puts their index finger up, which there again, like we just talked about, it's not a good place to have your finger because of the gases that come out of the actual revolver. You're going to get your hand cut somewhere along if you do that. So you just got to concentrate on tucking your actual hand grip all the way around. My hands engulf the entire grip, front, back, sides, and everything. So you have complete control of the firearm. There's a faction of folks out there who like to, actually tuck their thumb down like this, but I personally just don't like that particular hold because I don't feel like I have as much control of the actual gun itself and as much of a good grip on the gun itself.
Okay, now let's say you've got your revolver out at the range, and different ranges will have different, rules, policies about safety. If you bring your revolver out to Carter's Country and shoot at our range, they call for a ceasefire. Everyone with a semi-automatic knows slide open, gun laying down, facing down range. How would you lay down your revolver so that when the range officers come by, they know your weapon's safe and they can proceed forward to letting people change their targets and things?
Really, the most standard procedure for that would be to roll the cylinder out, take the rounds out of the gun itself, either spent or not spent.
Okay.
And you would simply lay the gun down flat on the bench with the cylinder open like this. That way when the range officer comes by, he can look and see that the actual gun is unloaded.
Right. And the key to the reason you would make sure the unspent are out too, range officer's walking by, he's got a lot of stations to check. He doesn't want to see any brass in that cylinder at all, right?
No.
Okay.
It's not. Plus the other people around you don't want to see that.
That's a great point. Yeah, they may have an opinion about that too.
Yeah. On the single action guns, they're again not quite as simple, but what we prefer, which is not too much of a hassle, would be to go ahead and take the actual cylinder out of the gun. And you can take the rounds out of the actual cylinder and then just lay the actual gun in front of you like so.
Okay, earlier on we were talking about the revolvers, and I think it's obvious that for the most part they haven't changed a whole lot. In a lot of years, the basic design is what it is. One innovation that did come along a few years ago with a nod to concealed carry, whether in a waistband or inside a purse, is a hammer obviously is a snag danger coming out. And this we have here is a Smith & Wesson hammerless. All the working moving parts are actually inside, makes it snag free. Obviously it's a double action. Let's talk about that just a little bit.
Okay. It's very, very popular. We really recommend this gun a lot to new gun buyers, a lot of females and so forth when they first get involved because it's very simple. There's very, very few moving parts. There's not much of anything that can really cause them more issues than they already have.
Right.
Along the way, being as stainless, it's pretty forgiving for the woman that's going to be carrying her purse all the time in and out hot and cold cars. People don't think about the black guns, but they will sweat.
Right.
They will rust up. I had a lady actually had a gun rust in less than 5 days inside her purse.
Wow.
Just because you go from a hot car to a cold building, the condensation builds up and the guns inside a purse don't get any air.
Right.
And plus then people don't think about putting oil on them. So
right.
This is the go-to gun for a lot of first-time buyers for sure. The biggest thing the biggest difference is going to be it's only double action, okay? And just so everybody knows, these double action guns, a lot of them, like Smith & Wesson, Ruger, and so forth, they actually have a lockout pin on it that you get a little key that you can actually lock the gun and make it child safe along the way too.
Right.
But anyway, firing a gun is very simple. Same as before, you're going to have to load the gun. You've got a sight, you've got an actual cylinder release on the left side of the gun. You're going to roll the cylinder out. You'll simply put the 5 shells in. You'll close it. And firing a gun, you simply pull straight through on the trigger. The hold will be the same as far like we talked about before with the thumb hold. Being men have bigger hands, it's a little harder for men to hold these things, so they have to concentrate, to work.
Make sure
but they're still a great, like defense type handgun,
right?
Even for men,
Yeah, it's and I hate to say this because I'm a man, but sometimes men need things that are pretty much foolproof, right. And this is one of them. I think once this thing's loaded, it's ready. The only thing that you've got to do is pull the trigger when you're needing to or when you're wanting to.
Right.
And so that can appeal not only to first-time gun buyers, like you said, people that aren't really familiar with handguns, or people that want to have the gun loaded and around, but they don't really want to have to worry about maintenance and all these other things. It's all shrunk down into a package there to where you have access to a firearm when needed, but that's about all you need to have. Yeah. That's about all you need to know.
Right.
You know?
Very good gun by far.
All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed today's video. Be sure and give us a like, and go ahead and subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see future videos come out. We're also always welcome feedback. Let us know what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, video subjects you'd like to see us take on here. And remember, if you've ever shopped, shot, or hunted with us, you're already a part of the Carter's Country family. Until next time. Okay.
Oops.
Yeah. I'll need final editing to say so on those montages, please. Some life-changing outtakes in there.
That's right.
Remember, if you've ever shopped, shot, or hunted with us, you're already a part of the Carter's Country family. Until next time, adios. I have one in my golf cart when I go to the beach. Stainless. So simple, even the wife can use it. Hasn't yet. But I don't leave it in the golf cart. I take it back home. But when we go down there and we're going to drive along the beach, I've got a little compartment there. It goes right in there.
Yeah. For the beach weirdos.
Yeah. And if you get far enough east, they're there.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.